Chromosomal crossover during meiosis is one of the key mechanisms that ensure that you have genetic diversity, that you have a fair amount of genetic diversity in a population. Remember that genetic diversity is key for selection to happen, because if you don't have enough genetic diversity, you don't have enough large enough a gene pool to choose from when comes the time when, for instance, there is a change in the environment and only a few individuals would survive if they have a different gene pool that is a gene makeup, a genetic makeup that is adapted to this new environment. So you need to have these genes adapted to the new environment in the original population. So meiosis is the process by which cells, gametes that are used in sexual reproduction are created, and these gametes contain half the amount of chromosomal content as in the other cells, and sexual reproduction is most widespread in living systems, and it is said that it's clearly an advantage in terms of evolution to use sexual reproduction, just exactly because of this process. Also of the fact that during meiosis there is a certain machinery of DNA repair that enters into play, and that is obviously an advantage for individuals or species having this mechanism. So chromosomal crossover is the fact that during meiosis, when these chromosomes split into haploids, they exchange material. So here you see an example where we have four alleles, on two different loci. So there is one loci with the alleles A, one loci with the alleles B, and you see that here one individual had AB, uppercase A, lowercase b. The other individual brought the chromosome lowercase a, uppercase b, and all the four recombinants of these four alleles are possible. So this, for instance, having a chromosome haploid with uppercase A, lowercase b existed here, but having uppercase A with uppercase b didn't exist in this original population in a way. So you see that this, thanks to chromosomal crossover, the shuffling of alleles makes it that every gamete that is created is a different, potentially different individual, okay, or potential individual that is different. So think about the fact that each spermatozoid carries an individual that will have a genetic makeup totally different from his father. A few slides to finish this series. First one about the concepts of species. We've been talking again and again about species. Several definitions for species have been proposed in the first half of the 20th century before scientists agreed on one. And it was given by Ernest Mayr. I think it's Mayr. That's a misspelling here. So in the 30s, he defined what a biological species should be, and it's formed of a species is formed of a set of individuals who can interbreed to give viable and fertile offspring, while not being able to breed and give such offspring with members of other species. So this second part of the sentence means that there is reproductive isolation. Okay. So when geographical isolation or artificial selection of traits provides significant phenotypic variations, but without preventing interbreeding, we have only one species and maybe different subspecies or varieties. So for plants, we usually say variety and subspecies for animals. For instance, my dog here on my right is Canis lupus familiaris, but he's member of the species that is Canis lupus, and Canis lupus is one species, including the wild wolf, because they can interbreed. Okay, if you breed a dog with a wolf, you have an offspring, and that offspring is viable and can also have offspring. So it's viable and fertile. So this makes that dogs and wolves do not form two distinct species. Okay, last slide for this day. How does speciation occur? So that's on the population at the population level now. The birth of a species is of a new species is not something that happens at a certain point in time. It's a process. So it's a process spanning over many generations. And this process can take place according to different patterns. On the leftmost column, allopatric speciation. So allo means different, and patric means place. So allopatric means different place. In all the patterns, we start with an original population, that is in green. And in allopatric speciation, there is the creation of a geographical, physical barrier. So, for instance, a piece of land becomes two islands, or a continent splits, like Gondwana, the original continent splitted to become Africa and Asia, etc. There is the creation of a barrier, and individuals do not cross this barrier after it's created. So reproductive isolation happens just because the two populations now are in complete isolation. There is no movement. Nobody from the left part of this camembert cheese is going to travel to the right part, and vice versa. So individuals evolve in isolation, and gradually they accumulate mutations mutations accumulated in the genomes of the population in green are different from the mutations accumulated in the genomes of the other population. So after some time, you have two different species, because they are no longer able to breed and give fertile offspring. Okay, and there are many reasons for that. For animals belonging to two species not to be able to breed. For instance, it can be that if we're talking about birds, the birds on the right evolved to take advantage of the food that was available, and this type of food makes it that they grew in size, and then for physical reasons it's no longer possible for these birds to breed, even if they were put into contact, to interbreed with these ones. Peripatric is something a bit similar to allopatric. In peripatric speciation, peri means just around, so the difference is that the new niche is significantly smaller. Okay, so some individuals migrate or do not migrate but use a new niche. For instance, a few individuals start feeding also on a different type of feed, and gradually, by also mating, only mating in isolation here, they form a different species after some time, by again accumulation of mutation, by the fact that the genetic pool here is no longer compatible with this one, or there is no genetic flow between these two populations because they mate separately in isolation. Parapatric is a phenomenon. Parapatric speciation is a phenomenon where there is no clear boundary between the two niche. I think a classical example of this is in plants. Sometimes it happens that you have diploidy, so polyploidy. Sorry, so individuals come to life with a 4X genome instead of a 2X genome. Instead of a diploid genome, they have what's the prefix? They have 4 chromosomes for each. They instead of having pairs of chromosomes, they have quadruplets of chromosome. And then they cannot breed somebody with a 4X genome, let's say, cannot breed with somebody with a diploid genome, and it makes that there is this adjacent niche. There is this group of people that is no longer able to breed with the other relatives, or it can be. That's an example. Sympatric speciation happens when there is genetic polymorphism in the population. There are individuals, for instance, who, if we take the case of plants, they keep on living in the same environment, but they blossom at a different time. Okay, in the year, and if they blossom at a different time in the year, they cannot obviously mate together. So that's how the reproductive isolation takes place. In the example I've just given, it would be a temporal problem of timing, of synchronicity of the mating seasons. And then they live in the same environment, but they become 2 different species. Okay, so the take-home message from this slide is that in all cases, speciation happens after reproductive isolation has been enforced by a mechanism or another, be it geographic isolation, or isolation because of reasons why, of various reasons why individuals belonging to the 2 different populations cannot interbreed. So speciation occurs always after there is cessation, after there is no longer any gene flow between two subpopulations, the absence of gene flow make it that the two different populations diverge to a point when they are no longer able to interbreed, even if they were put into contact together. So that's when we say there are two different species that are formed. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you will enjoy the practical session.